Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama.
How everything began? You was here in New York.
I was living on Mott Street, and my roommate was walking one day, and when he came to Bowery, he ran into Srila Prabhupada, who was dressed, of course, like an Indian sannyasi. H.D.G and I had both been to India together, and we had seen many holy men in India, and of course he recognized this was an Indian holy man. So he stopped him and said, "Oh, I see you're an Indian holy man." And Prabhupada said to him, "Oh, you from India?" He said, "No, I'm not, but I've just come from India. I was there on a little excursion to seek spiritual knowledge. And I saw many holy men in India dressed like you are." And anyway, Prabhupada said, "Well, I've just taken a storefront here on 2nd Avenue. Come see if it's suitable." So he showed Prabhupada showed H.D.G his storefront. H.D.G said, "That looks fine." And then he came, and Prabhupada said, "I'm holding classes Monday, Wednesday, and Friday evening. It's 7:30. Come and bring your friends." Prabhupada was there sitting on the floor on just a cushion and cross-legged. He came in and sat, made obeisance and sat down. And then Prabhupada picked up a pair of cymbals and started chanting. First he chanted some prayers to the spiritual master. And then he began the Hare Krishna mantra. And he invited us to respond, chanting and responding. And gradually a lot of people began to come. And many people just looked in the window, gawked. But gradually it became very popular, especially after each village other, that was the local newspaper for the hippies, they ran the front page spread, said, "Save Earth now," and a picture of Prabhupada in Tompkins Square Park with his little flock of followers around him.
When you decide to reach and to live with your Prabhupada?
Well, just a few days after that, we first went to the evening class. Prabhupada announced that he was holding morning class in his apartment, which was just above, on the second floor of the back building. So naturally I came, and after 1 or 2 days of walking over to the morning class, I said, "Why don't I move into the storefront?" And Prabhupada said, "Very good idea." And so I moved in. I was the first one.
And how in the first days, how was the life there? Srila Prabhupada was in front in that second floor, and all of you was in the matchless gifts in the And
Are you talking about the evening program or the morning program?
no, all the day. How was the first days? How everything?
Well, we used to come for morning program in his study room upstairs. Just there would usually be maybe 6 or 8 of us, and he would sit behind his little table desk, and we would sit on the floor in front of him. And then that was his study room. Then next to that was his temple area and the prasad room. And next to that was the kitchen. And very quickly I informed him that I was a pretty good cook and I could cook for him. And he welcomed that. And then he started inviting everybody to come for lunch with him. And we would prepare a big tray for Prabhupada, big mound of rice and dal and big stack of chapatis. And then he would offer it to the deities, and then he would distribute it to everyone around in the circle. Personally, he would go around and give them chapati and rice and dal from his one plate. And no matter how many people there were, we always had enough. The prasadam always satisfied. Sometimes Prabhupada would say, take more, take more. Of course, Prabhupada originally did everything. But then he taught me, and then I taught others. For instance, Prabhupada had no rolling pin for making chapatis. He would just press them out with his hand. And he originally showed me to make chapatis by pressing out a little ball of dough with your hands. But I got the idea, well, I think a rolling pin would be practical. So I brought it and I showed it to Prabhupada, and he said, oh yes, that's a very good idea. We have those in India.
Rama, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, 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 Hare Hare.
We began with the morning program every day,
Yes.
and the evening program three nights a week.
Mangal Arati in the morning.
Yeah.
But
Well,
was deities? No.
pardon?
Deities?
There were no deities at first. Then 5 or 6 months later, Prabhupada suddenly produced a pair of deities, Radha and Krishna. At first there was no Mangalarti, but we would just meet in his room. And he would chant prayers to the spiritual master, and then Hare Krishna. I remember one Sunday, Prabhupada announced we were going to go out on Kirtan. We got in a procession, and Hayagriva was there with a big bass drum. I was playing cymbals. And we went over to Washington Square Park, and Prabhupada sat on the grass and got all his disciples around him and started the kirtan. Then, of course, many people started crowding around. And then the police came. That you can't stay on the grass. Anyway, then he asked Hayagriva to get up and speak something. Hayagriva got up and spoke. And then he asked me to speak. And then we had kirtan again, distributed a little prasadam. That was always his program. Chant Hare Krishna, distribute a little prasadam.
there is a very famous picture where Srila Prabhupada chant and you dance. I saw that picture. It was in Tompkins Square Park.
Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama.
And you was the first disciple that traveled with Srila Prabhupada to India, and you received sannyas there. How was this ceremony? What's happened there?
Well, because that's after Prabhupada became ill. When Prabhupada became ill, he had a stroke and he fell into my arms. And I caught him. And at first I thought he was gone, because he wasn't breathing. And then after a minute or two, there was a Hare Krishna. It was amazing. So he said he wanted to go back to India, and he wanted to see his Indian doctors, Ayurvedic doctors. And so we came back to New York and then went to India. And of course I went with him. I arrived in New Delhi about midnight.
Wow.
And
it's dangerous. To drive in India is not so...
It was in July. Prabhupada had asked me to wear my gray flannel suit. So here I was in a gray flannel wool suit in India in July.
Wow.
It was about 100 degrees. When we got off the plane, it was like walking into a brick wall of heat.
My God. And that is surrender.
And it was surrender, but I was glad to do it for Prabhupada. He wanted to show his American disciple as a gentleman in his suit and tie. He announced that Kirtanananda is an excellent driver. He will drive me. Because I didn't know the streets of Calcutta at all. But Prabhupada was expert. And he would say, go this way, go this way. One time, he told me, go this way. Well, we were going down that way. It was a one-way the wrong way. And a policeman stopped us. And when he saw Prabhupada in the car, he says, that's all right, keep going. And he went ahead of us and cleared everybody out of the way so we could just go. Then we went to Vrindavan from Delhi and stayed there for a month or so. And I took sannyas then.
Mm.
That was a very interesting ceremony. It was in the Radha Damodar temple. He had quarters there. And of course in that complex there are the samadhis of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami. And Prabhupada announced afterward, he said, in the presence of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, Kirtanananda took sannyas. And he said, at the most auspicious moment of the ceremony, suddenly hundreds of people started gathering around the sannyasi and exclaiming, oh, he looks just like Lord Chaitanya.
Which years was the years that you felt more like an, physical, intimate connection with Prabhupada? When you was more time to talk here in the 22nd Avenue, or I think after, maybe in India. When you remember the most intimate?
Well, probably the time I spent with him when I traveled to India with him and lived with him for those months in Vrindavan. He was in his old quarters there. I slept on the ground there. remember especially the night at 26 Second Avenue when Prabhupada was talking. And he, of course, his constant reference was the Mayavadis. And he was always attacking the Mayavad philosophy. He was talking about how Dr. Radhakrishna, a great scholar in India, was referring to the verse in the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says, just surrender to me, bow down to me, worship me. And then he comments, Prabhupada says, it is not to Krishna that one must surrender, but to the unborn within Krishna. And then Prabhupada exploded practically. Just see the rascal. It is not to Krishna, but the unborn with. There's no difference between Krishna's inside and outside. And one who does not know this doesn't know anything. At any rate, then I began to take up the position to kind of try and explain that Dr. Radhakrishna was simply trying to present this, and finally Prabhupada sat there, became very still, and I went on with my impersonal justification, and finally he said, "Are you finished?" And I just sat there. And then he just went on a tirade and demolished me. Anyway, it was wonderful. Well, I think the best illustration of that was like in our morning classes in his study room upstairs. The sun would be coming in the morning, and Prabhupada would be talking behind his desk. It was like being in Vaikuntha. It was just so peaceful. It was in the middle of New York City. There were all these tenements all around. But in his presence, it all became Vaikuntha. It was just like one time we were walking on the street and there was a lot of garbage blowing on this. It was a little gusty that day, and a lot of garbage was blowing around the street. And someone remarked, "Well, it's so ugly around here, Prabhupada." Prabhupada turned and said, "If you could see it the way I see it, you would see how beautiful it is." That's Prabhupada's presence. The ugly becomes beautiful. So I thought I could get some money to help Prabhupada's mission. So I went to the welfare department and said, I'm not able to work. And I was dressed in a dhoti, tilak, shaved head with a sika. No one had ever seen these things in New York. And so they thought I was crazy. And they said, all right, well, just sign here. I didn't look at what I was signing. But I signed a commitment. So they locked me up in Belleville. And I was in there a couple of weeks at least. I made a devotee. Ranadir became a devotee from that Bellevue experience. But we were, of course, friends with Allen Ginsberg, and when he heard that I was locked up, and he had one of the big psychiatrists from Albert Einstein Institute go over and examine me. And that psychiatrist said, he's not crazy. He's practicing a bona fide religion. But the crazy people at Bellevue they said they wouldn't accept that. They said that the only way they'd let me out is if my parents signed me out. So I called up my parents and said, "Hey, Mom, I've had a change of heart. I want to be a Christian. Please get me out of here." So they came, my mother and father came and signed me out. I got in the car, went 1 block, jumped out of the car, went back to the temple.
And Prabhupada was happy that you...
Oh, he was very happy. He embraced me and he said, "Oh, I thought I couldn't understand how I have lost you. I prayed to Krishna, please give me back my boy." Of course, the inspiration was to do something nice for my spiritual master. I wanted the world to see how great he was. It's like if you have a diamond, you have to put it in a setting that enhances the diamond. Similarly, I wanted a building that would enhance the glory of Srila Prabhupada. And that was the inspiration. That was the driving force.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Remember the first visit of Srila Prabhupada to New Vrindavan community?
First what?
The first visit of Srila Prabhupada when he came to visit the New Vrindavan community.
Yes.
How he was happy.
Oh yes, Prabhupada loved it. He said this is just like India. I couldn't quite see the similarities, but in the sense that it's rural and it's natural, and he saw the possibilities of a spiritual community there, and he was very happy. He loved it. He stayed for close to a month there. While he was in the process of dying, he was confined to his bed in Vrindavan. I visited him there and took some ice cream from New Vrindavan, made with our own cow's milk and everything. And it was still frozen when I got to Vrindavan. We packed it, of course, in dry ice. And we gave Prabhupada a dish of the ice cream. Prabhupada had not been eating anything. And he consumed the whole dish of ice cream. Wow. It's wonderful.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,